Welcome to my first video of the Waterloo Epic Battles series by Warlord Games. In this video, I'm going to be painting up a specific brigade from the 100 Days era. I'm picking the 2nd Corps, 6th Division, 1st Brigade with 7 infantry battalions. And these were split into 2 regiments, which had some conflicts online about its content, but I tend to believe it consisted of the 1st and 2nd Light Infantry regiments. Each sprue in this French starting set is basically 1 battalion, so I'll need 7 sprues and the bases to go along with them. I'm going to be cutting out this one commander here, which I will make into the brigade commander, Pierre-Francois. This is a pretty open model that's accessible all the way around, so it's okay putting it on a base and using the base to hold on to it as you paint it. There are also these skirmisher models called voltigeurs. These you can mount on a base as well, because as you can see as I'm mounting them here that they are fairly spread apart, and this allows you to get to all the details without much trouble. However, for the rest of the infantry figures, you'll want to mount them onto something like a paint stick or this little shim sticks that I found laying around my house, and then with some double-sided tape. And one of the things that I would consider doing is just put all the troops of the same type or the same looking type on the same stick. As you can see here, all my command models are going to go on one stick, and I'll mount the same type of infantry on each individual stick so they all look the same while you're painting it. Now the voltigeurs and the brigade commander, which I put on bases earlier, can also be put on the stick, which will make handling them a little bit easier. Now, before you start painting, I recommend going to this site right here, which I'll be putting on the screen. This is a great site for the Waterloo period. It basically displays all the units that ever fought in the battle, and also it gives you full uniforms for every single individual battalion or command staff. I found this an incredible resource, and I basically relied on this completely for my painting guide. It's really a nice one-stop shop for this. The alternative to this awesome site is to go to various books to try to find out exactly which uniforms were used, and honestly, this site's just so much easier. I fully recommend it. To make these tiny models stand out, you want to do very simple priming. Just basically white primer out of an aerosol can or from an airbrush, which creates a nice white canvas for all the colors that will come afterwards. This allows all the details to truly shine on these very tiny little men. For this project, I'm going to be relying very heavily on Army Painter speed paints. I start with Peachy Flesh, and this is going to go on all the faces. As you notice, one of the benefits of putting everything on the stick is that you can just basically go down the stick and do the same brush motion all the way down very quickly. Once you do the faces, you can go down the same paint stick and now apply Peachy Flesh to all the hands. While you're working on the hands, don't forget to go to the back of the miniatures, and if there are any exposed hands there, make sure to paint those too. After working on the infantry troops, move on to the brigade commander and all the voltigeurs. Do the same thing with them, apply any flesh tone with Peachy Flesh, and it would be on the same areas of face and hands. Next, I'm going to switch to Broadsword Silver Metallic Speed Paint, and I'm going to apply this onto the swords as well as the fronts of the muskets of all the troopers here. You can see that it actually lays down really easily, and you can do them all the way down the line like you did the Peachy Flesh before this. Having everything on a stick makes it really fast and easy. Now don't forget to do the back of the models like I'm showing here. Next, I move on to Hardened Leather Speed Paint, and I'm going to use this for the stocks of the muskets. These stocks have a little bit more of a 3D shape to them, especially the butts of the muskets at the very bottom. They have sides to them, so as you paint, make sure that you have enough coverage on the sides of the muskets as well. And then doing the flagpole, I decided to make the flagpole this wooden color also, so I applied Hardened Leather Speed Paint to that. And then on the back of the models, I just kind of applied the brown to these areas. These are actually part of the stock of the musket. While I'm at it, I apply some Hardened Leather Speed Paint onto the hair of random troopers. And as always, don't forget your little skirmisher friends over here. Paint their muskets with the same Hardened Leather Speed Paint also. I do the same randomized treatment of hardened leather speed paint onto the hair or the backs of the heads of the voltigeurs, very similar to what I did with the troopers. Now, almost all these voltigeurs have facial hair in the front, so make sure any that have the brown on your hair have matching brown mustaches. Next, I'm going to switch to Sand Golem Speed Paint, and this is going to go on all the backpacks. You will notice as the video goes on that I use several colors as unifying colors for the entire army, which means there are certain features like these backpacks that I paint the same color all the way through. And even though there's some randomization from trooper to trooper, as you will see later, the backpacks keep everything kind of united. You'll notice here that as I go, I paint some of the rolled up greatcoats on top of the knapsacks with this brown. I do the same thing with the voltigeurs, and then I just kind of keep on going stick after stick and just work on the models from left hand to right or right hand to left and just get all of them done in one fell swoop. Sand Golem also works as a very nice light brown on hair, so randomly from model to model I just jump a few here and there, but I apply this Sand Golem onto the hair. And again, I randomize it so everything looks a little bit different. And just like before, if they have lighter brown hair, make sure that the mustache also matches the same color. Onward to the shakos or the caps. If you look closely, there are two different patterns. This one is an exposed shako, and you'll see a little plate in the front of it. While these ones with the little triangular shape in front of it are actually shako covers. So these are actually pieces of fabric that the French used to put over their shakos to weatherproof them. And a common color for this is basically the Sand Golem, which I'm putting here. And I'm going to randomize it from model to model. There are other colors that I'm going to put on the shako covers later on. So space these out and leave several white along the way. These shakos are pretty 3D with lots of different sides, so when you paint this, make sure you go to the back of the model and make sure you have paint coverage all the way around. You don't want to leave any white spots. Next, I'm going to use Talos Bronze Speed Paint, and I'm going to be putting this on the sides of all the drums on the musicians. So going down the one stick that I have for all the command stands, I identify all the musicians and I paint the sides of their drums with this color. Don't forget the back of these models, there's a little bit of the sides of the drums here too. Next, I switched to Tyrian Navy Speed Paint, which is a dark gray with a tinge of blue. This is going to go on random greatcoats on the French troops. I basically put one greatcoat with this color, and then I jump a few, I put another. Sometimes I don't mind putting them side by side. But the idea is to keep everything interesting and so that no two figures look exactly the same. On the troops without greatcoats, I paint some of this Tyrian Navy color onto a random number of greatcoats that are rolled up on top of the knapsacks. You only need to do this on the troops without greatcoats on, as I'm showing here. Next, I use Palette Bone Speed Paints, which is a nice beige color, and these go on a few other shako covers. This is also another common color that they used to use on these shako covers. So just like before, I kind of skip a few here, put a few there, and I randomly put this color onto the rolled up greatcoats on the back as well. This palette bone color also works really well on beige colored greatcoats. I apply this onto random models, and this creates one of the signature looks of the French army that featured this color of greatcoat. I also apply this palette bone color onto the tops of the drummer's drums, as I'm showing here. I'm now going to use Greyflower Gray Speed Paint, and first of all, I'm going to apply it onto the hair of all the remaining troopers. Anything that I didn't paint dark brown or light brown, I paint this gray. The reason why I'm using gray is actually it contrasts a little bit better with the black shakos, which I'll show you later. And I paint up the remaining white rolled up greatcoats on the backpacks with this color. Now, Pierre-Francois Bourdin has been neglected for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and apply this gray onto his horse. I am careful not to apply this gray onto the mane of the horse, its tail, onto the saddlecloth or onto Mr. Pierre himself. I have some leftover hardened leather speed paint on my palette, so I go ahead and apply it onto the mane and the tail of the horse afterwards. After that, I paint the remaining shackle covers in this Greyflort Grey speed paint. And then I continue on and I paint all the remaining white greatcoats with this Greyflort Grey. After this color, all the greatcoats as well as the shackle covers should all be painted. For the eagles on top of the flagpoles, I'm going to be using glittering loot metallic speed paint and painting these eagles. Looking at my uniform guide, I noticed that the 4 battalions of the 2nd Light Infantry Regiment actually feature green colored musicians. So their tunics are going to be painted with orc skin speed paint, and I apply it onto the musicians of 4 of the command stands. The other 3 I will leave white for later. Now we will look at the most iconic color for the French army, blue. I'm going to be using Hilort Blue Speed Paint for this. This color is a little bit brighter if you look at it firsthand, but it actually works very well because these models are so small that you need a color that's a little bit louder and a little bit brighter to stand out. If not, the models will look just really dark. So I use this blue color and I apply it onto all the tunics on all the troops. The only ones that do not get these blue tunics are the drummers that I had painted green earlier. There should be 4 of them. Everybody else gets blue tunics. Be sure to cover the front and the back of the model as you go along. And as usual, use the same paint stroke all the way down the paint stick and you'll be able to get a lot of these tiny 15mm models done very quickly. For Pierre-Francois Bourdin, his entire outfit from tunic to pants is all in blue. So I apply this Hilort blue onto his tunic and his trousers. I also applied this Hilort blue speed paint onto all the tunics of the voltigeurs. You'll notice that my speed paints have been increasingly darker in color, and I'm going to finish off at least the common colors with grim black. I go ahead and paint all the shackles that do not have shackle covers with this grim black color. If you followed my other videos, you know I always advocate starting with the lightest speed paint colors and then advancing to the darker ones. Because as you get to the darker colors, it's easier to just paint over any of the mistakes you made with the lighter colors. Besides the black shackles, I also use this grim black speed paint on the bottom of all the musicians' drums. The brigade commander's bicorn hat also gets this grim black speed paint. And his boots get black as well. Speaking of footwear, you'll also want to paint the shoes of all the troops black. Now you'll want to notice something. There's actually a difference in troops that have just shoes or ones that have gaiters, which look like high-cut boots, but they're not. They're actually gaiters that go up to your knees. So look closely at the miniature. Anything that looks like it has gaiters, paint it from the knee down in black, and any that don't have gaiters, just paint the shoes black. The benefit of the lighter color to the darker color speed paint approach is over here, for instance, you can see that the cartridge boxes were overpainted with the Hilort blue, but it's no big deal because the grim black is darker and you can just paint right over the blue. At this point, I'm done with speed paints and I'm moving to acrylics. I'm going to be using gunmetal acrylic paint and I'll be painting all the sword scabbards on all of the troopers. There should be a scabbard for each trooper, so just look closely. And you'll want to be sure to paint them from the front and the back. It is fairly 3D in shape and it's got a curvature that goes all the way around. So make sure that you have proper coverage from both sides. Also note that Mr. Bourdin has a scabbard on his left-hand side. Next, I use Greedy Gold acrylic paint and I apply it with a detailing brush onto all the plates of the exposed shackles. Note that only exposed shackles have the plates Everything else that has a shackle cover will not have to plate, and you will not have to paint those. Next, I'm going to put this gold acrylic paint onto the chin scales on both sides of the shackle. The detailing brush will allow you to be more precise, and be very careful with these strokes because they can easily overpaint the jobs that you had done earlier. Looking at my painting guide, I noticed that the brigade commander has gold epaulettes, so I used this greedy gold acrylic paint in these areas. Next, for all the straps on the torsos, for this I'm going to use matte white acrylic paint, and with the same detailing brush I carefully try to apply it onto all the raised strap surfaces on the models. Now don't be too critical. If you are a little bit messy with this part, don't worry about it. We will apply washes later and it will clean up a lot of the minor messes that you make, but try to be as careful as you can. But if you overshoot a little bit, don't worry about it. On the backpacks, there is a vertical strap that starts from the top of the backpack all the way down. Carefully apply a white line from the top to the bottom. Sometimes it helps to thin this paint a little bit with water, so it's a little bit more runny, and it allows you to have nice straight lines without any clumping. On the models with the greatcoats, there are actually shoulder straps that show up on the top of the shoulders. Make sure to paint those white to complete the look of the backpacks. If you need more access around the Voltigeur and Brigade Commander models, you can remove them from the paint stick. You can actually do this earlier if you want it, and then this allows you more access to the details, like this sash on the Brigade Commander. This is a step I forgot to do earlier, so I used some leftover Highlight Blue Speed paint for the saddle cloth on the Brigade Commander's horse. I also used some leftover hardened leather on the hoofs of the horse. With the based voltigeurs removed from the paint stick, it's much easier to twirl them around and get easy access to all the various straps on them. There's actually a lot more exposed surface on the voltigeurs, so you'll want to look all the way around them to make sure that you've painted all the necessary straps white. At this point, I'm fully complete with all the base and what I would call common colors, which means regardless of the regiment or the battalion, these colors are shared throughout the army. Next, we're going to look at each battalion specifically and identify the colors that make them unique. Let's start with the 1st Light Infantry 1st Battalion. This is the command company which houses the colonel. So one thing you'll notice here is that all the collars are going to be red and your pants are going to be blue with a few white exceptions. I next refer to this painting guide that came with the Warlord game set, and this shows you what pom-pom colors go with each company. Before I start painting, I'm going to select the stands that I want to use. I'm going to pick this all blue command stand right here, and then I've decided to make the 1st Light Regiment all out of greatcoats. So I pick all the greatcoat stands here. For the Carabinier company, I pick one stand with at least plumes on the right hand side, and then for the Voltigeurs, I pick some with plumes on the left hand side. And then I just fill out the rest of the stands. And only the 1st stand will be blue uniforms. Everything else will be greatcoats like I'm showing here. Here are plumes on the right for the Carabiniers and plumes on the left for the Voltigeurs. In the painting guide, it shows that the standard bearer, the musician, and the captain all have blue pants. So I use the same Highlight Blue Speed paint as before and paint those pants. I also randomize and paint other troopers within the same stand with some blue as well, while leaving some of them white. While you're painting, make sure to do the back of the pants and always kind of flip them around to make sure that you're painting the correct models with blue pants front and back. Use the same method to randomize blue pants on the greatcoat models. Now, if you had any overpaint from the other colors, just go ahead and paint those pants blue, because the blue will cover those mistakes, and the ones that you did a good job with and the pants still look white, leave those ones white. This overpainting method saves time, so you don't have to go back and cover up those mistakes. Just paint right over them with darker colors. Now I switched to acrylic pure red paint, and then I apply it with the detailing brush onto all the collars. As I mentioned earlier, the uniform guide showed that every trooper that does not have a greatcoat is going to get red collars. Now, since this is a unit that I use mainly greatcoats, the only ones that you need to paint the collars on are for the command stand. All the other 7 stands actually have greatcoats which do not have exposed collars, so you don't have to paint those. This red acrylic color is also going to be used on the Carabinier company. So what you'll do here is basically apply the red onto any of the plumes of the stands that have plumes on the right hand side. So these are the Carabiniers. Typically for the French, they used to put the Carabiniers, which are their big strong guys, all the way on the right, and the voltigeurs all the way on the left of a firing line. So in this case, you will want to put the red on about 4 or 5 models, not all the models on the stands. You want to only put it on about 4 or 5 of them. The rest of them, you're going to put regular company colors. Since the base has 2 stands, paint another regular stand behind it with the Carabinier red pompons as well. Again, only do about 3, 4, or 5 of them, not all of them. On the left-hand side of the line are the voltigeurs, or the skirmishers, and these have yellow pompons. I use demonic yellow acrylic paint, and I paint about 4 or 5 of the models on the left with yellow pompons. I paint the front and the back stands this way. For the pompons of the first company, which happens to be the command stand, I use goblin green acrylic paint, and I paint the pompons on the command stand. All my command stands are going to have green pompons to signify that they are the first company within that battalion. Always be sure to paint the back of the pompons as you go. The stand of figures right behind the command stand on the same base is going to be the second company. And for this, I'm going to use Void Shield Blue acrylic paint. And all the pompons on that stand up and down the row are going to get this blue Void Shield color. Onward to the second base, which should have 2 greatcoat stands without any plumes, just pompons. One of them we're going to be painting lava orange. This signifies the third company. So again, from left to right, you will be painting all the pompons this orange color. And for the stand right behind it, it gets this pinkish pompon, which I'm going to be using Warlock Purple for. And I go ahead and apply it onto all those pompons. This will signify the fourth company. Next, I'm going to use dark tone wash in very specific areas. This is a darker, blacker looking wash, and it works really well against these straps. It gets rid of any of the painting mistakes you may have made with the white straps a little bit earlier, and it dresses it up really nice. Once you're done with the straps, slap some onto the face as well. Apply this wash onto any of the white pants. These brings out the folds and creases of those pants. And on the backpacks, apply a streak of the wash down the white vertical stripes that you had painted earlier. This also makes it nice and crisp, and it looks a lot neater after you're done. Everything else, do not apply any wash to. Everything else has already been speed painted. Another little trick I use is I put this wash into any of the areas I might have missed paint on. For instance, if you see any of these white spots on the models, which can be a little bit unsightly, just apply some wash to them. This wash treatment is something you'll want to do to all the models. Do it on the straps, the faces, and then any of the mistake areas that you have. But I'm not going to mention this again because I'm basically going to assume that you'll be doing this on every model. After this, you can basically mount all the stands onto your bases with some plastic glue. You'll want to put the command stand in the front, the stand behind it in the back, and then just keep on going. Make sure that the Carabiniers and the voltigeurs have the guys with the plumes in the front, and if there are any stands without plumes, put them in the back. Here is a quick work in progress view of what a fully painted battalion looks like. The 1st French Light Infantry 2nd Battalion is very similar to the 1st Battalion, except that the banner carrier and the musician wear white pants. So I do the same thing as before. I paint the collars red, and some of the pants I paint blue. The captain is going to get blue pants, but the banner bearer and the musician, I leave those pants white. Besides that, just repeat all the steps you had done with the 1st Battalion. The 3rd Battalion is almost identical to the 2nd Battalion, except the captain doesn't have a red collar. So when you're painting these, leave the color blue. Here is a quick work-in-progress glimpse of the 3 fully painted battalions of the 1st French Light Infantry. Onward to the 2nd Light Infantry Regiment. A lot of the steps that I used for the 1st Light Infantry I'm going to be using here, with the key exception being that the musician has a green tunic instead. So for the 1st Battalion, I'm going to be painting both the standard bearer and the captain with blue pants, and then I've randomized it like I used to before on various models. But those 2 command models get blue pants, the musician gets white pants. Now the 2nd Light Infantry, I wanted to give them the uniforms without greatcoats, so a vast majority of the stands are going to have the blue tunics instead of the greatcoats. And this is going to require slightly different detailing, and I'll show you as we go. Here on the command stands, I give them green pompons to designate the 1st company, just like I did before. Next, I use pure red acrylic paint for the collars, but bear in mind that you want to leave the musician's collar green. If you look at the painting guide earlier, the musician actually doesn't have a red collar like everybody else. Here you can see that the rest of the troops in the battalion are going to have red collars. So go ahead and paint red collars on all of them. And when you get to any stands that have carabiniers, you want to paint the plumes of those guys red as well. Make sure that the pompons of the carabiniers are red. Again, you want to only do about 3, 4, maybe 5 of them max and leave the rest of them for the rest of the company colors. When you get to the voltigeur stands, you want to be a little bit more careful because the collars of the voltigeurs are yellow, not red. So make sure the 4 or 5 or 3 models that you're picking on the extreme left of those stands get yellow collars, yellow pompons, and yellow plumes. Something that I forgot to mention earlier is that the plumes of the voltigeurs get some blue on the lower half of it. I use deep blue acrylic paint by Army Painter, and I paint this portion of the plume blue. For the models to the right of the voltigeurs, I paint one stand of them with the 3rd company colors, which are orange, and then the next stand with the 4th company color, which is pink. And for the carabinier stands, the models on the left of the carabiniers get green for 1st company or blue for 2nd company. If you look closely at the musicians for the 2nd Light Infantry, you'll see that all their braids in the front of their tunic are yellow, and so are the stripes in their arms. For this, use demonic yellow acrylic paint like you did for the voltigeurs earlier, and paint these areas in yellow. Don't forget to do the back of the arms as well. The command stands for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th battalions are exactly the same. They feature the standard bearer and the musicians with white pants, and their musicians have red collars. But otherwise, go ahead and paint them exactly like you did the 1st battalion earlier. For some of the battalions, I do mix greatcoats in with the ones with regular uniforms. As a pro tip, if you're running out of quote-unquote regular stands that you don't want a plume on, you can just snip the plume off like I'm showing here with a good hobby snipper. What you want to do is just cut it right along where the musket is, and then after that you want to bend it forward and then pull the plume off. That will just make them look like regular troopers and not like carabiniers or voltigeurs. Now that all the standard infantry is done, I'm going to move on to the voltigeur stands. Let's not miss out on these guys. So you'll want to paint all their plumes, pompons, and epaulets in yellow. So this signifies them as the voltigeurs or the skirmishers of the French army. Don't forget to put deep blue acrylic paint onto the bottom half of all the plumes on the voltigeurs. Finally, on the brigade commander, you'll want to paint the ribbon on his bicorn yellow, followed by a tiny spot of red with pure red acrylic paint right in the middle. After that, apply some wash onto his sash just to give it that extra definition. And after this, Pierre-Francois Bourdin is done. Onward to flags. You'll find this flag sheet in the box for this French army. There are sheets for the 1st and 2nd Light Infantry regiments, and also several battalion flags like I'm showing here. Go ahead and use your scissors and cut out the flags that you need, the 2 regimental flags, and then cut out the white red, and blue battalion flags. Next, grab some Elmer's glue and then fold these flags in half. Apply some Elmer's glue with an oil brush and apply it onto the flagpole. While applying the flags, be cognizant of which units you're putting it on. You'll want to put the regimental standard on the one with the colonel's command stand, and then you'll kind of repeat this process, fold the flag, apply glue. The 2nd battalion gets white, and the 3rd battalion gets red, and this rounds up the 1st Light Infantry. The 2nd Light Infantry 1st Battalion gets the regimental standard, and then the rest of them get white for the 2nd, red for the 3rd, and then put blue for the 4th. One of the last steps is putting flocking on your models. You want to use this battlefield grass from Army Painter. You'll want to apply Elmer's glue onto the base with your old brush. Apply them between the legs like this of the front row, and then move on to apply Elmer's glue in between the stands like this. It's honestly not the easiest area to reach, so you want to use a lot of glue in this area. Try to glop it a little bit so that there's enough coverage that the flocking will stick. Now on the back stands, you want to do the same thing as the front stands. Make sure that you put glue in between the models carefully, not to get it too high on the legs. And once you're done covering the whole base with glue, it's time to dunk the entire stand into the flocking bin like this. And using your fingers, you can actually pick up some flocking and dump it into the middle section like I'm showing here. You want to fully coat everything to make sure you have maximum coverage. And then what you want to do is just remove the stands after that and knock off all the excess flocking from all sides. The final step is to protect all your work with 1 or 2 coats of matte clear varnish. And after this, you're all set. Here is the command base for the 1st Light Infantry 1st Battalion, followed by the command base for the 2nd Battalion, and the command base for the 3rd Battalion. Next, the command base for the 2nd Light Infantry 1st Battalion, the 2nd Battalion, the 3rd Battalion, and the 4th Battalion, because the 2nd Light Infantry had 4 battalions. Here are some examples of the middle base, the left flanks with the voltigeurs, and the right flank with the carabiniers. And here is the entire 1st Light Infantry 1st Battalion, followed by their 2nd Battalion here in line formation, and the 3rd Battalion in march column. This is the 2nd Light Infantry 1st Battalion in attack column, their 2nd Battalion in line, their 3rd Battalion, and their 4th Battalion. Here are some voltigeurs in skirmish detachments and battalions in mixed formation. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be making more epic battles videos, so I hope you follow along. Until then, take care.